And we are live. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our food safety conversation happening on the World Diabetes Day. The estimates in 2019 showed that 77 million individuals had diabetes in India, and that was expected to rise to over 134 million by 2045. The burden of diabetes has been increasing steadily since 1990, and it's seen a larger increase since 2000. It's not just a coincidence that it is moving in lockstep with the urbanization, and somewhere along urbanization comes our food habits as well. I think the westernization of our diet is becoming more popular, especially in the urban areas, which means more refined carbohydrates, processed foods, trans fats. Of course, trans fats, the FSSAI itself has been pushing to kind of eliminate trans fats and processed food, but the onslaught of the carbs and the processed food kind of stays. Not to forget the sedentary lifestyle. So really what we consider as an improvement in our quality of life is really turning into a nightmare. So people think Aram karna hai is really becoming a problem in the modern times. So as a part of the industry, which is pushing westernization of our diet, now we can debate what is westernization or not, but there is definitely a certain amount of copy that we do of the West. We thought it was important for us to take a pause and understand what we can do better. So to talk about the topic, today we have a fantastic panel. And first off, we have Dr. Rahul Baxi. Dr. Rahul Baxi is a consulting diabetologist at the Bombay Hospital, Mumbai. He is trained in internal medicine and diabetology. And prior to moving back to Mumbai, he was with, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, it's NG Teng Phong General Hospital, Singapore. He has a diploma in internal medicine from Academy of Medicine and College of Physicians, Singapore, and a postdoctoral fellowship in diabetology from Christian Medical College, Vellore. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Ms. Ujjwala Baxi. She is a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator. She is the founder of Poshan-Cure Thru diet, registered in Singapore and now also in India. She has been working on healing individuals for the past 15 years. She's been actively working both in India and Singapore, both very diverse nations in terms of food and other habits. She's a regular contributor of content on the topic of nutrition to companies' internal publications, as well as outside publications. So she's contributed to places like Philips, Home Living, Straits Times, Elle Magazine, Pharmacy, Vadam Teas, and so on. So she's a regular speaker at events, spreading the awareness on the topic. She has been helping individuals with simple weight loss issues, as well as critical conditions like heart issues, kidney problems, cancer, pregnancy, and lactation diets, to name a few. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr.
Good morning. And finally, we have Prashant B, who now runs his consulting company called B Prashant Food and Nutrition R&D, offering consultation to food businesses for their R&D needs. In the last 7 years, he has provided consultation to several food startups as well as established companies, helping them bring new products to market. He is a 1992 graduate from GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar. And then followed by that, he's completed his post-graduation in food technology from CFTRI, Mysore. Very illustrious career. He started with Paris Confectionery, followed by Spitline, Breachem. He then went on to lead the R&D for Cadbury's, India, Dabur, Britannia, and Abbott. In his illustrious career lasting 27 years, he has launched several products at the companies he's worked and continues to do so for his clients now. Of course, he's also an avid runner and a fitness expert. Before we started, we were discussing he runs a half marathon every day. I was saying that I barely walk 3 kilometers every day. So welcome, Prashant, to this food safety conversation.
Thank you for this introduction, Ramesh. Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And before we get started, a little bit about myself. So I'm Ramesh and I run Food Safety Works. We are a food safety solutions company based out of Bangalore with offices in Mumbai and Delhi. And we work with over 500 food businesses across the country to help them improve their food safety through implementing food safety management systems, designing facilities that help reduce cross-contamination, ensuring product and regulatory compliance, developing new products, finding product market fits for both Indian as well as international markets. Now, as a company, I think while we deal with food safety, I think nutrition is a very, very integral part of it. The regulatory is very integral part of it. And we want to kind of spread the awareness, also try to understand and bring in the food angle to it. So we'll start the conversation with that. Let me start with you, Dr. Baxi, and I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times before. But to get the discussion started, so if you can describe on the anatomy of the disease and how it occurs and why it occurs and what does it affect. So basic stuff to start with. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, so it's important before we go ahead into discussion of how to prevent and how to manage. It's important for us to understand what is diabetes, how it happens, and so on. Some simple stuff. So I'll try to keep it simple and not too technical. So diabetes basically, and that's what I tell to a patient, when I see a patient sitting in front of me for the first time, diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Simple. So what is lifestyle? Lifestyle is what we eat, what we do the whole day, how we sleep, what kind of stress we have, how much exercise or walking we do. So all that combined is lifestyle. So that's one part to it. Of course, there are a few other things like genetics, our parents or family history. That also does play a role. I believe we are talking mainly about type 2 diabetes today. Type 1 diabetes, just because we're starting, let me mention about one sentence. Type 1 diabetes is, how to differentiate is basically type 1 diabetes patients will require insulin for all their life, in spite of lifestyle adjustments. Whereas today's discussion will be based more on type 2 diabetes, which is a lifestyle disease and which can be modified by changing a lifestyle. So that is where we can make a difference. Type 1 diabetes, you can't prevent. It has a genetic component, it has an autoimmune component, which can happen to anyone. So that's a different part to it. So in type 2 diabetes is, I should say, to an extent in our hands to get it, in our hands to prevent it, in our hands to treat it or manage it as well, to an extent. So one part, as I mentioned, is lifestyle. Second part is genetics. And just you mentioned anatomy. So basically, we all know there's an organ called pancreas in our body. A very small organ, but very, very important, of course, because it has got something called as beta cells, which produces insulin. Its job is to produce insulin, which is when it sees sugar in your blood, and then control the sugar level so that they don't go, high. So from the blood, it can push it into the muscle and the fat and so on, and keeps your blood at manageable levels, so that the glucose or the sugar, in simple terms, in your blood doesn't harm your organs. So that brings me to the complications of diabetes. So when the sugar levels rise, there are numbers which, if further a question comes up, we'll discuss what numbers we call as pre-diabetes and when do I call it as diabetes. But if sugar levels are not within the normal range, sugar levels go up higher than that required, that can damage your organs. That can affect your organs very slowly, very gradually. Complications, chronic complications will happen over months to years, sometimes even over decades. So patients, and it's not uncommon for us to see patients with 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years of diabetes. Nowadays, what is happening is, especially in our part of the world, many of us are getting diabetes very early on in their age, like 20, 25, 30 years, we are getting diabetes. So now that's so early. And of course, lifespan is improving. So if a person who has diabetes at the age of 30, and he goes on to live till the age of 80, and if the diabetes is not so well controlled, there's a very high probability that in the future years, we are going to see more and more complications of diabetes. Because with such prolonged exposure to uncontrolled diabetes, I'm saying, if you control your diabetes well, with diet, with lifestyle, with whatever medicines, if at all required, your doctor prescribes you, then nothing will happen. You'll live a good life free of complications. But the problem arises that many of us are not aware, first of all, that we have diabetes. So there are 3, 4, 5 years lag period before we diagnose diabetes. Diabetes may be there for years, but you never check. Initially, diabetes does not cause any symptoms also. So that's why they call it a silent killer. Because it will just stay silent and not cause you any symptoms or any problems initially, first 5, 7, 10 years. And many patients are coincidentally diagnosed that you go for a tooth extraction, your doctor asks that, okay, go get a sugar done or HbA1c done, and they suddenly find that fasting sugar is 180, which is very high. You want to get a cataract surgery done, doctors very diligently, all cataract surgeons, all eye specialists will ask for a sugar level, and suddenly they find, oh, your sugar level is high, you go control your diabetes, then I will operate. And sometimes you suddenly have a heart attack, MI. And then you get admitted to the hospital, blood tests are done, and you find you have diabetes. And before this, you never knew. So many of them are coincidentally diagnosed because it does not cause any symptoms. So this is just in brief about diabetes and its initial part. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think that's a good start to the conversation. I think the key thing to note being that the organ that kind of controls all of this is really the pancreas, and then which manages the sugar levels, and we all need to kind of make sure that there is only certain amount of sugar levels in our blood, right? So I think that's a good beginning. Then we will move on to the next part. So coming to Ms. Baxi, so there is now blood sugar is, of course, sugar gets into the blood through the food and all of that. So I think it'd be good for us to understand what is the food and how does it become part of the system and get into the blood and all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh, for that question. It is important, and food science and nutrition is catching up so much interest nowadays, even in the layman, that I think it has become like a play. If you really don't have anything to play around, let's just look up a recipe, or let's just read up for some ingredient or try that over ourselves, right? So food has become the most easiest form of online play right now. Nutrition, actually, in context of that specifically. So the food, I would always like to quote Maya Angelou on that the food we eat can be either the safest form of medicine or the the toughest form of poison. Now, what happens here is people take it very lightly when we eat a meal. Like, we all feel that, okay, let's just concentrate on this meal, and next meal we'll control. So my logic here is always that boond boond se ghat badta hai. That means every drop of fluid that you intake counts, be it water or any other type of fluid. Likewise, every grain or every ingredient that you put inside your body counts and matters. So if we choose healthy foods, if we choose a balanced diet, it goes a long way. And if we choose trending diets, fad diets, that also has their own repercussions. So what happens here is, when we are controlling our carbohydrates, so when it comes to diabetes, the first thought that runs in anybody's mind is sugar, one. And people are amazed nowadays that we don't consume any form of sugar. We are totally no sweetener also. And still we've developed diabetes. Just yesterday, I was speaking to a client, and the person said that I have never eaten any sweets and I've got diabetes. And my wife eats so much sweets and she has not got diabetes, but she's got bone problems. So the idea is not that white sugar is directly related to our blood sugar. Of course, if we consume it, it is going to spike it up. But it is not just about that. It is the totality of the food composition that we do in a day's routine, and every day we contribute to our health. So if we feel that, okay, 5 days a week, we are going to eat in a very controlled manner or in a very stipulated manner, but the next 2 days of the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we can splurge. That's where the entire control system can go for a toss. And we have seen that with our patients, that they would gain weight on a Monday, show up 2 kgs or even 1 kg weight gain. Their blood sugar spiking up because Sunday, Fridays, the feasting started and it never ended until Sunday. And alcohol is also a part of it. So it is like Mr. Narayan was also saying, that it is a thought that you have to live with, and it is a practice that you have to live with every day. As we were having a casual discussion earlier, he did mention that going for a walk or a jog is a conscious effort. So likewise, every meal, every food that we put in our body has to be well thought, the consequences of it. And of course, there are certain liberties we can take and we should take so that the boredom should not set in. Keeping that in mind, the diet can be still balanced and without hurting ourselves and falling into the prey of these trending diets. I think if one is thoughtful enough of what kind of food they are eating, they're balancing out their carbohydrates, proteins, fats with the micronutrients, fiber, water. It's an easy task to perform, which is nowadays literally blown out of proportion, and because it looks very difficult, but I don't think it is that difficult to manage diabetes and blood sugars. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think key was the habit part of it, saying, it is regular. So don't just assume that you can stay hungry for 5 days and eat whatever you want, because finally, if you overload the system, it's going to break down. It is like driving a car, and even if you are driving it at average 40 miles an hour every day, and then you want to drive 120 for the next 2 days, it's not like it will be safe. So I think that is there. And of course, the other point that it necessarily need not be the white sugar in your food. There is the overall carbs that we talk about, various forms of sugars that get into your bloodstream, and that's what causes the spike. So now coming to you, Prashant. So we'll talk a little bit about the food processing industry. Do you think we are responsible for perpetuating this problem, or putting out sugars? You've worked in the industry for over long time, so you know, and you've launched products, so you know what kind of products we are launching. I know taste is a very important factor, but what's your thought on that?
Okay, so see, you've done me a bouncer, and I need to decide whether to duck or to swing. Okay, so let me manage this technically for you. See the industry, the food industry, the way it works is, you're right. The foods are designed for taste, but no industry wants to make unhealthy food for the consumer, because if any industry prepares a food and sells it to the customer, and the customer suffers from consuming that food, the industry cannot benefit. So even the worst products in the market are as good or as bad as what they are. So to just define food as good or bad will not do the trick. See, the way we see food is, the way food is produced, what I see is almost all the foods that we consume are high on carbohydrates and either medium or high on fats. They're relatively low on proteins and low on vitamins and minerals. There is effort which is happening to bring in some amount of fibers in foods. Some of these foods have some amount of fiber in it. Not all of them are good sources of fiber, but some of them are, some of them aren't. So now if you take a sum total of all the food that is being produced, whether in your home, by your mom or by your cook at home, or whether it is being bought from the market as a processed food, as a snack, or as a meal, or a component of your meal, what I observe is most of them are high on carbs and on fat. They are low on proteins. They're maybe okay on fibers or low on fibers, and are low on vitamins and minerals. Ujjwala just spoke about balanced nutrition. See, See, balanced nutrition, like while there are a lot of people who talk about it, I don't think it is well understood. Consumers don't understand a balance of nutrition, and it's not all that easy to balance a nutrition. One has to work very hard to balance nutrition. I know it because I do it for myself and I do it for my family on a day-to-day basis. For people who eat traditional foods, who are prone to snacking from the outside, getting food from the market and ensuring that the food remains balanced is a tall order and very difficult. I've seen stuff similar to this, whether it is the East, whether it is the West, whether you go to the Gulf, whether you go to the US, you go anywhere in the world, this problem does exist. It's the foods are predominantly higher on carbs and fats. So, does the industry, means whatever the industry provide, is it like food which is well balanced and good for the consumer? No, I think the industry has a long way to go before the majority of the foods that are available in the marketplace can be rightfully claimed as balanced foods. So yes, in a way, the industry does have a role to play in perpetuating the problem that leads to diabetes. Because the type 2 diabetes that Dr. Baxi was speaking of, one of the reasons that lead to type 2 diabetes is obesity. The more you eat, the more you become obese, you become predisposed to diabetes. So obesity needs to be managed. And given the lifestyle, see, with the changing times, see, our forefathers used to be physically far more active than what today's generation is. Today's people are far more sedentary. They're more white-collared as compared to what the ancestors were. So the food also needs to adapt. It needs to change from what it used to be. See, a lot more of carbs was necessary when physical work was more. But when you're sedentary, when you're not using up the calories that much in a day, consuming that much more of carbs and fats doesn't really help. I would like to pause at this moment, leave you with this, and let us see where the discussion goes further. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the idea was to sort of, I understand that it's a mixed bag, right? Saying, okay, finally, ultimately, we know what we are eating and we should sort of be able to balance it. But like you rightly said, it's not easy, and it is easy to get carried away. So there are things like that. And of course, our lifestyle changes. I think we continue to eat like what we used to eat earlier. Even our regular diet, for that matter, is a carb-heavy diet. We eat about 3/4 of on our plate, right? So we eat about 3/4 of rice and a little bit of a dal, if you're a vegetarian, of course, and a little bit of a sabzi on the side. So I think that balance also hasn't happened yet. So I agree. I think at a high level, it is an overall balancing act that all of us have to do. And of course, the industry has to do as well. So coming back to you, Dr. Baxi, you briefly talked about genetics. Now, this is a fairly debated topic, saying a lot of studies suggest that Indians have bodies that are more resistant to insulin and likelihood of diabetes. Some would also say that, hey, it's okay. Indians can kind of handle higher blood sugar levels than most people can. Now, we all understand the research is sort of around I haven't seen a lot of research being done on Indian population as such. We kind of follow the norms from outside. So do you think there is any merit in this discussion about we being able to handle higher levels of sugars and things like that?
Yeah, no. So I personally don't believe that's true. You just need to say, visit any dialysis center near your home. Patients undergoing dialysis thrice a week, queuing up every morning so that the turn comes. The dialysis center had 10 machines. There are 20-30% patients standing thrice a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or they have the Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. This is the kind of regime given to them. 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 patients of diabetes in most dialysis centers would have diabetes, which would have affected their kidneys, and now they're on dialysis. This is just an example that because nephropathy, kidney dysfunction is a complication of diabetes, and Jain's trying to project. So it's not true that we Indians can handle uncontrolled sugars. No, we are seeing lots and lots of complications of diabetes, over the years. And as I gave you the reason, one reason is because Indians compared to the Western population, we are getting diabetes at an earlier age. One. Second, we all know, and this has been proven in researches, that Indians at a lower BMI also, the obesity cutoff for the Western population compared to us Indians are different. We are called overweight or obese at lower BMIs. So even at lower BMIs, we Indians tend to have more fat in our liver, and more fat around the tummy, so to say, centripetal obesity. So even though you calculate your weight, calculate your height, and get your BMI, it might look reasonably okay. But even at that BMI, we have more visceral fat, what we call it in medical terms, and we are more prone to diabetes. So that's another reason. There was a term called the thin fat Indian. There was a study done, and they found the thin fat Indian. We look thin, or we are thin, in terms of the numbers, but we are fat because we have a lot of visceral fat, which predisposes you to all the complications of metabolic syndrome and diabetes. Another thing I mentioned is that we are living longer. Healthcare has improved, in all parts of the world. Even in India, we have got the best doctors available. We've got the best medicines available, best of healthcare available in our part of the world at a reasonable cost, compared to any other country probably. So with the lifespan improving, as I said earlier, those with diabetes are living longer. Now, if you live long enough, and if your glucose levels are not well controlled, you are going to have complications. So that is and to manage complications is very, very difficult. If it's a cardiovascular event, say a heart attack or a stroke, CVA, paralysis, or retinopathy, which can damage your eye, or nephropathy, I gave you an example of dialysis, or foot infections, the risk of amputations is so high. A small wound in your foot, a shoe bite in a diabetes patient whose diabetes is not well controlled. And they have neuropathy also, which means they will not feel the pain which somebody else would feel. If you hit a nail or hit a furniture, you will feel pain, or an ingrown nail, for example, in your foot. So these are all very simple examples which can, progress rapidly in a diabetes patient into a non-healing ulcer or a wound, and they may require amputations or surgeries. We see a lot of patients with amputations around. So there's no truth that we handle glucose levels better. So that's one part of the question. What was the second part, sir?
No, I think it was just related to that, saying, should we have, so if we cannot handle it, obviously we cannot have different levels. But there is a lot of questions, right? Everybody says that, okay, the research is done in white Caucasian male, right? Why are we using those numbers for an Indian population?
Yeah. So that's basically only about the diagnosis. But, we have a lot of research done in India also. We've got some great researchers all around the country. And to add to that, most of our doctors, the amount of numbers we see, number of patients we see. So, we develop our own experience and our own judgment for our diabetes patients. For example, I'll just give a simple this thing. In Singapore, I used to see 8 to 10 patients during my clinic. Everything was fixed, like clockwork. That okay, first 20 minutes, one patient, second. And India, it's totally different. We tend to see a lot of patients, and we have to see because of the patient-doctor ratio and so on. So we still try to do justice in terms of the time we give them. But then gradually we develop our own experience and our own thoughts about the patient. We need guidelines, and luckily we have a lot of Indian guidelines also. Indian, like RSSDI is one of the premier Indian institutes now, which is made from diabetologists and endocrinologists all over the country. So they make annual guidelines for our diabetes patients. They, of course, do look at the international guidelines, extrapolate to a population, look at Indian studies, and then give their own guidelines. So we utilize them also. And to add that with the international experience and the experience which we have with our own patients. So it's important to control our diabetes, and we are not, if at all, we are at higher risk than the other Caucasian or the Western population, if not the same.
Got it. So I think, no good news here. I guess I think the effort to localize is going on. So that is a good thing to know that, of course, we are coming up with our own standards and measures. So I think that's good to know. Now, similar question to Ujjwala as well, right? We always fight, right? This fellow eats so much, he's still very thin. I eat only very little, yet I am fat. It is almost like it is sticking to me. So there is a certain amount of, I guess, genetics in the way the food gets absorbed and all of that. So how do you see that? What do you experience that? Saying how much of a genetics is there in balancing your diet, I would say, right? Saying, are some bodies smarter to throw things away, while some bodies are dumb that they just keep everything and store it in fat and make you look ugly?
So this is actually a common notion amongst Indians, and when we have patients discussing about rice, like we know rice is a staple ingredient in India, and when Indians are discussing their diets with dietitians, they always have an excuse that Chinese, Japanese people, they eat rice 24/7 and still they are leaner. And what is it that goes wrong with us? And we are so hardworking, and we have all sorts of excuses. The patients always want to justify themselves that we have been trying our best to consume the rice in the I cook brown rice. So I would say there are two ways we can look at this question. Like, of course, you are talking about the genetics of the human body. So yes, there is a difference. Indians are amongst the Asians also. Indians are the ones who are highly prone to developing diabetes because of the insulin resistance that we are prone to. Of course, also it is related to our diets. So how much ever we would like to argue that the Indian diet is similar to the other Asians, wherein rice is being the staple ingredient, but what are the accompaniments? The accompaniments that we are also a vegetarian nation prominently. So what goes along with the rice matters a lot, but we also have sections of our country which are non-vegetarian. They also consume rice with fish, like Japanese or Chinese. But the preparations, how the food is being prepared, makes a huge difference, and the amount of rice. The Chinese and Japanese, they take rice in a bowl, and we put a plate full of rice in front of us, and there is no measurement to it. In fact, if I were to ask a patient who is, maybe a Bengali or a South Indian, they would be like, they would really find it difficult to answer the question how much rice they are putting on the plate, because they have never measured. They've just taken heaps and heaps of rice, right? So it is the context of portion control, the amount of accompaniments, the type of accompaniments, the way it is prepared, and how quickly it has been eaten. That is also a major factor that makes a huge difference. Of course, the fat content of the diet also helps in controlling the appetite and the palatability of that meal. So when we are talking about different ingredients, rice is one. Likewise, we have many other food items, like, with Indians, it's not just the carbohydrates don't just stop at rice. It also comes along with the roti, and then it comes with the potato ka bhaji. So we have to look at the complete plate method and modify that, help the patient understand that it is easy for us to state that the genetics of us Indians really make us suffer. Yes, it does, because we are prone. But at the same time, the composition of the plate also has to be taken into consideration. We start our days with pohas and upmas. That's also carbohydrate, right? Wherein the Westerners or the Asians, they will eat an egg omelette, maybe with a slice of bread. But of course, if they do overgo on breads, they will also show likewise reports, blood sugar reports. So they are also not escaping the fact that if they go overboard on carbohydrates, they will not suffer. It's going to be the same. It's just that we can argue saying that the genetics of Asian population is a little bit more on the safe side, that yes, they are able to digest carbohydrates easily, but we have to also look into the various other factors, the type of rice that they use. Of course, staying in Singapore, we have seen the difference of the brown rice. Like in a simple food court, you would have both the choices. White rice, which is short grain, brown rice, which is short grain, but still the choices are available. So there the genetics of the grain itself is important as well. So the genetics of the grain is what we are focusing so much, build on the fiber in the diet, dietary fiber has to be included. That is what resistant starch. And the starch by itself of the grain is classified into 3 categories. Rapidly digesting starch, slowly digesting starch, and then we have the resistant starch. So when we are trying to take care of our diabetes, looking at our own genetics, we also have to look at the genetics of the grain that we are consuming. So we have to increase the resistant starch, which in layman's term nowadays is a fiber. And the more fiber, of course, we incorporate into the diet, we are reducing the glycemic index, the sugar spike into the blood after consuming that meal, and eventually we are helping ourselves in achieving euglycemia. So it's the genetics of both the body, the human body, as well as the genetics of the food plate, I would say. Thank you.
Great. So I think, yeah, nobody to blame and no good news again. So I think, but yeah, the silver lining though is that I think we need to have more choices, like you mentioned, fiber.
And one more factor,
a lot of people.
I would like to just add on to this that, there are many people out there, specifically Indians as well. They would say that, okay, everybody in our family has diabetes, so I am also prone to it, so might as well eat and enjoy. That's also a sad way to look at, inviting the disease by itself. So, the genetics can pull the trigger by 70%, by 30%, the 70% is still in our hands. So if we are so much aware that we are likely to develop diabetes because of our strong genetics, we should be then much aware and careful enough to take the right actions to prevent or at least delay the onset of diabetes, because we know that diabetes just doesn't stop at high blood sugars. It brings along with it macrovascular conditions. So if the person has seen a family history of diabetes, they must have definitely observed some kind of macro and micro complications at with their family members. And that should itself be an alarming zone for them to take actions, rather than just think that, okay, this is a family history and I am okay going to enjoy this. And there are people who have that kind of a mindset, which needs to be changed.
Got it. So I think if I were to bring my old automobile analogy into it, just because everybody in your family died of car crash does not mean you continue to keep driving at the same speed, right? As in, you have a little bit of a control, and probably it makes sense to slow down a little bit. So I think with that, continuing on the same discussion of Indianness, right? So coming to you, Prashant. Now there is packaged food, there is Indian food, and then there is non-Indian food. And the common terminology we always say is Western food is bad, Indian food is not less, is healthier, all of that. Now, when we go into the processing setup, there is all the time the Indian food guys, processing guys who are raising flags saying, oh, you're going to, so one example will be the front of the pack labeling, which government wanted to enforce, and all the traditional Indian snack food manufacturers said that everybody will probably get a 1 star on them. So they are alarmed. So while there is that, if we were to do the math, it doesn't look any different from a Western food, I would say, in terms of health and all that. But we keep blaming. So what do you think, that Indian food is any day better than the Western ones?
See, food is a very broad term, and there are several categories within food. So, like if I were to draw attention to, say, a certain category, and let's say, okay, there's McDonald's, you have burgers, then there are these pizza joints, you have pizzas, and many of the schools call these as junk foods. But then what about the samosas and the bread pakoras? And you mentioned the snacking items. So see, doing comparator between East and West for food in general is kind of cultist and is not, it's not very accurate. That's not the right way of going about food. See, a comparison always needs to be done apple to apple. So it's like, see, like Ujjwala mentioned, see, it's about the rice that you eat. So it's, see, a basmati vis-a-vis the rice that a Japanese is eating. See, what's the composition of the rice that a Japanese eats? Means if you ask some of the Indians to eat that, they won't be able to eat that rice. They won't like it. We're talking about brown rice. We're talking about red rice. It means red rice, brown rice is known to Indians. They find it very difficult to eat. Parboiled rice is known to Indians. These rices are known to be more nutritious than the refined white rice. So when it comes to a comparator, like, see, it has to be apple to apple. And the way I see it, see, there's good in the West, there is not so good in the West, there is good in the Eastern diet, there is not so good in the Eastern diet. See, again, I go back to what I said earlier. See, it's about how do you moderate the carbs and fats in your meal and go up on your proteins and fibers. And the vitamins and minerals need to be just right. It cannot be too much or too little. See, because the threshold for managing them is very little, because that's why they're called micronutrients. You need to have them at the right amount every day. If you do not get them in the right amount every day, you're losing out on it. If you're taking too much of it, it's becoming toxic for you. So if you take foods like, see, if you look at a food that has been designed for health, if you go for supplements, you'll find that supplements take a lot of pain in designing foods in a way that when you consume them, nutrients become available to you in a certain way. But if you take other foods in general, they go by the taste of the food, and invariably they would be higher on carbs and fats. So for foods in general, whether it is Western or whether it is Indian, the same kind of problems exist everywhere. The question is, what do you select to eat?
Got it. So I think, so if I were to reinterpret that, finally it all breaks down to what are the components in the food you're eating rather than the food by itself. So it just is wrong to categorize something saying, well, just because it is Western, it is unhealthy, or if it is Eastern, it is healthy.
Absolutely.
So finally, yeah. So I think that's a great kind of message saying, please do look at your components in your food that you eat. Just because the rice plate does not come with a label which says high on carbs does not mean it is healthy, right? Elsewhere you may be able to see the label and claim that it is healthy or unhealthy. So
no,
I think
so if you see a plate every day when you eat, see the rice is predominantly, rice or roti are predominantly carbs. Over and above that, the vegetable that you cook, at least 30 to 40% of them, it's invariably a potato or one of the root vegetables, which again have a whole lot of carbs. Even if you take a dal that you're cooking, the dal has around 20% of protein. Other than that, it's all carbs. So see the concept of in a Western country where people eat steak, see, it's protein and fat, which is predominant, which is the main course, and the bread is the accompaniment. They have a small piece of bread along with a meat, and it that kind of provides them a bit more of protein as compared to what you get out of Indian food. Here in an Indian food, the rice or the roti becomes your main course, and your vegetable and dal and raita or dahi and all are accompaniments. So you land up eating very small quantities of your vegetables and dals and your curds, etc. And you eat a whole lot of rice and wheat. And other than that, see, even when you're having your tea or coffee, the amount of sugar that you put in. Means you add some sugar into it. You like it sweet. So while people think that they are having a kind of a healthy meal, if they actually pick up a pen and paper and start calculating, they'll realize that they are binging much more on carbs and fats than what is naturally healthy.
Yeah, no, I think, and we drink a lot of tea and coffee, so which is with milk and sugar. I can tell you, I drink about 6 cups a day, and that has been my concern as well. So if I drink 6 cups, that's like a 600, roughly a little over 600 calories just coming from carb, and out of my 2000 or 2200 that I need, that's about 1/3, right? And I still eat 3 meals a day. So yeah, I know I'm the typical belly fat guy which needs to work on my tea coffee. So that's what I'm working hard on, sort of managing. Let's see how good I get at. Now coming to you, Dr. Rahul, there is lots of words, right? So there is prevention, there is management, there is cure, there is healing, all of them meaning very different things, but sometimes used interchangeably. So I think it'd be good to kind of get a little bit of some more detail on what each of these mean. How should each one refer to this? Of course, there's a lot of I don't know if I could call it fake news, but there's a lot of hearsay and unverified data on some of these things. So how does one deal with all of this?
Yes. So yeah, it's important to again understand. So I'll start with management, the term management first. Management involves, when we learn medicine, management for us, we get questions like, say a full question in exam, write about management of diabetes, 10 marks. So in that, what I am supposed to write, just to give an idea, is I start with a brief introduction. What is diabetes? What happens in diabetes? Then when a diabetes patient comes, how I'll manage. So manage includes investigation, interpreting the reports, and then treatment part. So this full thing is management. Everything, all combined is management. So it would start with doing the test, interpreting the results, then advising the patient. And advising is not only about medicines. Medicines always come last. It would be more about going into the patient's diet, understanding, get a dietitian on board, take their help also. That's also management of diabetes. So that is what management is, very complete, so that we don't miss out on any ends. Of course, looking for complications also is part of management. I refer to an ophthalmologist. I do some blood tests which will assess how the kidney of the patient is working. If I have a suspicion that patient might have some cardiac involvement, do an ECG or do a treadmill test or do a tube echo or get a cardiologist on board. So all that is management of diabetes only, because we are seeing the patient as a whole. I just don't want the glucose report to come down and okay, aapka sugar acha ho gaya, aap ghar jayenge. Nahin. Even with improving glucose levels, he might have an heart attack, tomorrow. So where's the management? So the management is everything about the patient. Now, next time I'll pick up to discuss is something very, very trending, I should say, something which is relatively, not new, but then much more coming up in the media, which is something called as diabetes reversal, which would always interest everyone. Reversal is a layman term, in medicine, or as doctors, we talk about the term called as remission. But if you open up any social media, Facebook, pick up any newspaper, nowadays you are seeing so many advertisements. Come to us within 3 months, we will reverse your diabetes. Okay, your medicines will stop. Your HbA1c was 12. Show a before and after kind of photo, before a sad person's photo and same person smiling and doing like this. And okay, my HbA1c was 11. Now it is 6. My insulin has been stopped. I've lost 10 kg weight and all that. So you have to understand these advertisements in perspective. They're not wrong as such. Not that such cases are not possible. Even we see such patients. Very regularly. We do work on them and we get their diabetes into remission. But why I'm saying this remission and not reversal? A small thing to it. Reversal, what impression does it give to the patient? Ki mera diabetes to reverse ho gaya, khatam ho gaya. You go on an appropriate diet, you start walking, you lose 7-8 kgs over 3 to 4 months. Your requirement for medicines will come down to a significant extent. If you're on insulin, even I stop insulin. A lot of my patients, who go on a proper diet with the dietitian, who follow their diet, who lose weight, who exercise regularly, I give them some medicines, which help them lose weight and control the diabetes. And then I can eventually stop a lot of drugs. So it is very much possible. But difference between reversal and remission, reversal gives you a false, false sense of security. And falsely so, though, but that patient would feel that my diabetes reverse ho gaya hai, and now I'm okay. Dawai band ho gaya hai. That takes them to a kind of a comfort zone. Slowly, what kind of diet and exercise they were doing with the discipline, that would slowly come down. Then a 7-day holiday or a 15-day trip to the native place, and things can go a bit haywire. And once that happens, patient feels कि नहीं, doctor ने तो बोला कि diabetes अभी reverse हो गया. Slowly the glucose levels or the sugar levels start creeping up again. But now, because he thinks कि reversal हो गया, he will not be checking his glucose levels by himself or in the lab as frequently, say 15 days or monthly or whatever required or recommended after that. Now, 2 or 3 years go down the line, the patient starts gaining weight, he doesn't pay any attention. And as I mentioned earlier, diabetes is kind of a silent killer, which means initially patient may not have symptoms. Fasting glucose, which had come down to 95, slowly going up to 100, 105, 120, 130, 140. Patient may not have any symptoms at those levels. He will not feel anything. So he won't see any particulars unless he's under the guidance of his doctor or whoever was guiding him and who's looking after the patient every 2 months, 3 months. Tell them that, okay, you do these tests and see me after 2 months. Even though we are talking about remission here, you have to do this test so that we know where you stand after 2 months. We don't know. And what remission means is that your diabetes is controlled with your diet and exercise without medicines as of now, as of today. It may, and in fact, very likely, it may or it will come back again over a period of time. That period of time could be weeks or months or even years. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you are bound to get that diabetes again. The numbers will cross the levels again. So if we maintain your diet and exercise, it gets delayed, and it can be delayed for a long, long time also if you're disciplined. But if you don't monitor only, you don't check only, you will not come to know. And then suddenly you find that, fasting is 300. And at those higher levels, fasting of 180, 200, 300, you start having symptoms. So I'll just mention a line about some common symptoms of diabetes, which we've not spoken until now in this session. What are the common symptoms of diabetes? So the commonest symptom, or what would the patient have, as I've told earlier, that patient does not have any symptoms, is an asymptomatic patient. मतलब कि कुछ भी नहीं मालूम पड़ेगा, बस report ज़्यादा है. That is most dangerous. If you have symptoms, if you have, say, burning in your feet, or if you go to toilet at 3 or 4 times at night, or you feel dryness around the mouth, these are common symptoms of diabetes, which you would see in some patients at high levels. You feel dryness around the mouth and feel thirsty and keep drinking water every 1 or 2 hours. You lose weight, 5-7 kg lost in 1 to 2 months without any effort, which is unintentional weight loss. You do diet, exercise, you work towards it, you lose weight. But you're not doing anything, you lose weight 5-7 kg, you start feeling weak. So you will approach a doctor. But if you are not having any symptoms, you will not approach a doctor. So these are some common symptoms of diabetes. The commonest still being an asymptomatic patient, which means no symptoms. And so when these symptoms happen, you will go back to the doctor again and you check your sugar is very high. So we don't want that complacency to set in with when your diabetes goes into remission. So this was about diabetes remission and reversal. And apart from that, routine things that you have to monitor for complications regularly. Your doctors will advise some basic, like for example, cholesterol test. It should be done at least once a year if it is normal. And if it is not normal, you might want to do it 2 times a year or 3 times a year as your doctor suggests. I'll share a small example here. A few weeks back, I think almost a month back, I saw a young gentleman whose triglyceride levels were 3,300. Very, very high. I don't often see this. This was covered in some news media as well. I had tweeted about it, and it was covered in some news also. And that gentleman, he's around 110 kg, fairly young, 30-odd-year-old gentleman. And his diet was totally haywire. He was drinking almost 500 to 700 ml of thumbs up, cola every day. He liked Chinese food, so he was eating Chinese food every day from outside. And you can imagine how they, it's basically all carbs. It would be either fried rice or noodles, which is all carbs with some veggies and all sorts of MSG and red sauce and color and whatnot thrown in. And even his breakfast was from outside. He liked desserts and so on, and no exercise at all. He had night shift duty. He was working for some American company, so working at night and all that. So all the sleep disturbed, and so everything thrown in. So I worked on him. We advised him diet. And we got his levels down, put him on some medicines, and he's doing well. From 3,000, it came down to 1,000, and then came down to 300 something, 1,300, now 300. So, and very high triglyceride levels put him at risk for something called as pancreatitis. So it was all about lifestyle. So we need to understand that. And then and he tested because he had got diabetes also. His HbA1c was 15. Otherwise he would have come to know. He was enjoying his life, no problem, even with 110 kg and these kind of blood levels. So it's important to understand and evaluate and investigate for complications also when we suspect, or at least follow the guidelines, and then you will not miss out on a lot of things. Yeah.
Great. I think a very important point, right, between reversal and remission. So I think there is no reason to sort of go off guard and think that everything is fixed. And we seem to do that quite frequently. I've seen a lot of patients in other cases also, where they would not just diabetes, but in other issues where when things improve, then they suddenly go off medication or they stop monitoring it and then get caught off guard because it's been too long since you monitored. So I think that's a key thing to take care. So now coming on to you, Ujjwala, there is some of these Indian foods, right? So I keep coming back to Indian and somehow, I don't know, I probably love the Indianness of the whole story is so there are some, now you find ashwagandha in everything that we eat. Everybody loves ashwagandha. And then there is some preliminary research which says, oh, it helps you in some diabetes. There is methi, fenugreek seeds that have also been recommended. There is bitter gourd. There is this whole system of Ayurveda that we have, which is supposed to be a holistic medicinal system. So what's your thoughts on whether this is underexplored? Should we do more around this? Have we tried some of this? Does it work? Does it not work? What really should somebody like us do?
So it is like, and it's a very common practice actually, because see, whoever comes to a dietitian, they've already tried their best to control their blood sugars by themselves. And when they have tried their best, if they have done their research, they have educated themselves a little, definitely they will try to cut down the carbs, and make the difference of increasing the protein, increasing the fats, or balancing that out. But at the same time, they would also make sure that they have already incorporated some kind of methi seeds, ashwagandha into their diets. So if it is done in this fashion, when the whole day's diet is being supplemented with these kind of nutraceuticals, I would say, or functional foods, it makes sense. But then we have different set of clients who would just consume methi seeds and still eat all sorts of junk food or high carbohydrate foods, because they feel that just that 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of methi seeds in the morning is going to save them for the rest of the day or maybe prevent diabetes. And of course, it will help in certain manner. It will help up to a particular meal, like say consuming methi seeds will help to drop the cholesterol. But if the person is continuing to consume high carbohydrate foods, the triglycerides are going to shoot up. And if they are dense on trans fatty acids, methi seeds cannot, combat that kind of faulty diet. So there will be definitely positive difference in the blood reports, but I wouldn't say it's a fair practice to continuing with faulty food habits and just incorporating a few of these functional foods. It's like, you're just saving your own sinking boat by doing a little bit of totkas and nuskas like this. So it is always best to have a holistic approach. And in my opinion, it's always not just the diet per se also. We have to look into the various aspects. We have to look at with the diet, we have to look at the lifestyle, the sleep patterns, the fitness regime, the stress levels of the person. So we have also seen individuals who are very particular about their food intake, but their stress levels are high. Their working hours are completely opposite. During the sleeping hours, they're working because they're working at international timings. So when we have such kind of differences of lifestyles, and still trying our best to control the diet, be it with Ayurvedic means, be it with homeopathic or, modern nutrition means, modern nutrition therapy, we still need to understand that health is a holistic approach. And we cannot just focus on one factor. Like somebody cannot just, running marathons and continue to keep drinking energy drinks or juices. It is going to play its negative impact on the triglycerides or the blood sugars as well. So calories in, calories out. Yes, that concept exists, but eventually what are you consuming in the calories? Like as you were mentioning, Mr. Agrawal earlier, that a lean person can still have high blood sugars. Okay, so we can't be misguided or by the appearance of the person. What runs in his blood still needs to be explored by a blood test. So if somebody says that I look fit and fine, I still feel my energy levels drop, I still have nocturia, I still feel extremely hungry, I don't know why, and I'm not able to increase my appetite, they definitely need to go for a blood test. It is the weight is just not the marker of predisposition of diabetes. So of course it is one of the major factors, but a lead person is also not saved. So we need to be careful about it, and we need to consider that just consuming one or two ingredients which are specifically mentioned over the ages, like by Ayurveda or by all sorts of different modalities, it will help, but eventually the work has to be done in totality. It should not be just dependent on one or two ingredients in the day.
Great. So, yeah. So I think I think the message is that it will help for sure, but that is no reason to kind of be careless about it. I guess I think that's the story. Now coming to you, Prashant. So now you get a lot of products which claim them to be for diabetes care, and the numbers are multiplying by the day, especially in the nutraceutical categories. There's lots and lots of products which make these claims. Now, what are the basis of these claims that companies tend to make?
Good question, Ramesh. The first point, let me address. See, foods do not take therapeutic claims. It's not permitted. B, it's not fair either, like ethically. So foods do not take therapeutic claim. So there is no magic in food which says it can like either cure or work on something related to diabetes. So generally, what foods are what foods are claiming or tend to claim is being friendly to diabetes. So foods are either friendly to diabetes or they are not. Means either they're amenable to be consumed by patients of diabetes or not. The primary thing that most foods take care of when they take a diabetic friendly claim is they ensure that the food has a low glycemic index. So a low GI is something that is the crux of the design for product which claim to be diabetic friendly. The use of ingredients. See, the use of ingredients or the product per se to claim that it is diabetic friendly would need some kind of a clinical study and data generated to show that it has been tested out with people with diabetes and it has been found to work with them. Now, if either the ingredient suppliers have done it and they share the data that is available with them, and the person who uses that particular ingredient in creating a product and claiming diabetic friendliness in his product is able to correlate that data into the product, or the product per se gets subjected to a clinical study. So either ways, a clinical test is done for confirming that something is diabetic friendly or not. So these form the basis for any food product to be seen as suitable or unsuitable to diabetes. On a design front, some of the things that get taken care of are no added sugars is something which is preferred. Generally, products which are high on fibers tend to become lower on the glycemic index, and the protein levels are usually kept higher in foods which are considered as better for people with diabetes.
Got it. So I think, so the thing to note is just because they are diabetic friendly, they will not cure anything. I think that's the first point you mentioned, but yes, there is some merit in the fact that they may cause less trouble for you by virtue of controlling some of the ingredients which can spike up issues in your system. So I think that's what really they mean, although they may term it in different ways. So diabetes care was something that I picked up from a brand. I don't want to name a brand, but then they clearly put on their products saying diabetes care, right? So you could interpret it loosely as saying, does it fix it, or does it avoid it, or does it help you in not getting worse? So I think people do use terminologies like that.
Sure.
So I think we are at about 65 minutes, and we are almost heading to the last round of questions. So people who are tuned in, if you have any specific questions, please do put it on your YouTube or the portal, our learning portal where you have joined. So please put in your questions and we will take them as they come as we complete the last round. So coming back to you, Dr. Baxi, I know there's so many things that we keep talking about, and there's so many things to be talked about. So I really don't want to ask any question now, and just kind of let you mention some important things that you think we didn't cover, both for prevention, management, or cure. From what I understand, there is no real cure as such, right? But whatever else you would want to share on the topic.
Sure. So basically, just to kind of summarize and give a message. Next few decades are very important for India. When we're talking about diabetes here, because the prevalence is increasing, the diagnosis of new cases, the incidence is increasing. And one reason for that I would attribute is to the last 2-3 years. We've all been through COVID-19. We've been through a total lockdown. Our kids, we've seen them just stay at home, study on such online methods. The diet patterns have changed. Kids used to play outside. Now with the advent of these mobile phone devices and all that, many of them are glued to their phones, glued to their screens, even for studies, glued to the TV also. So these things, and add to that over the past 20-30 years, I think at the start of it or during our discussion, you mentioned an important point, like comparing ourselves to our parents and grandparents. The food habits, of course, have changed now for the worse, I should say. And the activity has gone down. How active we were has reduced. So all these things, and say, for example, ease of availability of transport. Now vehicles are available. Public transport has improved in India. You go down, you have a bus or a train or an auto rickshaw or a car or taxi, something standing for you. So we are not walking enough. All these things. And also another point is the kind of food we are eating. Last 10-20 years, even we compare with our own childhood, and the kind of food eating out was kind of a luxury. We used to eat out, say, once a week or once in 2 weeks or once a month sometimes. That, okay, now today we are going out with the family. Now I know people who are almost every day ordering food from one of these online, everybody has apps on their phone, and ordering something or the other after their dinner from outside. If there are 4 members in the family, all of them would want to order something else, the 3 or 4 things being ordered. So that can be also a big problem. So important thing here to note is we have to be very careful about our diet and lifestyle, what we are eating, how active we are. So that is to be understood. We have to watch our weight also. Important, again, as I repeat myself, is diabetes is a lifestyle disease. We have to understand how what we are eating, how active we are, and watch our diet, watch our weight. Another important thing is to be another important thing is to be aware about diagnosis. If we don't check our glucose levels well, after a certain age or a period, it's going to be difficult to diagnose ourselves. So we have to regularly check our levels, and that's how we'll be able to diagnose on time, because unless you diagnose, you're not going to be aware. One last point I'll mention here is we've been talking about diabetes till now. One I feel more important term which we should know is pre-diabetes. So pre-diabetes, this is just a definition, it's just a number. For example, if you take a fasting glucose levels, from your venous glucose, 126 or above is considered as diabetes. This is what the American Diabetes Association or whatever WHO, what most of the guidelines say. So what does that mean? 126, I get a fasting glucose, I will tell that, okay, sir, you have diabetes. What if it is 124? What if it is 114? What if it is 104? What if it is 100? Is it normal? No. So according to, last 20 years, 15 years, you've got this new term in called as pre-diabetes. Now, skeptics and those who criticize would say these numbers are all pharma driven. You bring these numbers, doctors tell that you have pre-diabetes because you want to start medicines. It's not true. Pre-diabetes patients, we don't start medicine. These numbers have been brought in because in a lot of large studies, it has been shown that someone with pre-diabetes, say a fasting glucose of 104 also, which would look normal. 126 diabetes hai, mera to 104 hai. No, that is pre-diabetes. 104 is pre-diabetes. Why they brought in is because they found that even someone with pre-diabetes has a higher risk of cardiovascular issues. It's a cardiovascular risk factor. The risk of heart attack in someone with pre-diabetes is higher than compared to someone without pre-diabetes, say a fasting glucose of 85 or 90 or 95. Even though the risk is continuous, 90 is better than 95, 98 is better than 104, that way. So, but they've given a cutoff of 100. So 100 to 125 is considered as pre-diabetes. So with pre-diabetes, most of us will not start medicines, but it is there to make you aware that, okay, you have pre-diabetes, and it has been found that every year 20 to 30% patients with pre-diabetes will get converted to diabetes if they don't take care of their lifestyle and not change what they're doing today. That is why this term has been brought about, not to start medicines, not for any pharma or nothing. So there's no truth in that. So if you have pre-diabetes, you have to start working on your diet and lifestyle so that you can make the appropriate changes. Because from pre-diabetes, either 20-30% chance of progressing to diabetes, 20-30% chance of staying into pre-diabetes for the next few years, and there's also a 20-30% chance of reversing or remissioning back to a normal glucose level. So if you lose weight, if you change your diet, if you do exercise, from pre-diabetes, you can go back to a normal level. That is what we want to do. That's why we are impressing upon this term. So I feel going into the future, this pre-diabetes term is even more important because, you can go back to where you were, without pre-diabetes, because it will encourage you, because now it's important that if you have pre-diabetes, doctor tells that you change your lifestyle, you lose your weight, otherwise you're going to have diabetes. So it's a kind of warning, a warning signal, a warning bell for us. So this is very important. And a lot of our youth have pre-diabetes today. I've been seeing a lot of young people also, and I mentioned this lockdown and the food which we are having and the lack of activity and online classes and all these things. So all those things are very, very important. So we have to see how much outside food we are eating, how many desserts we are eating, how much sugar or refined carbs goes into our meals. Simple breads or biscuits or noodles. These things are going to be very, very harmful. And so that is what we address. It's not about medicines. It's all about changing your diet, changing your lifestyle, and maintaining a heavy weight, maintaining a proper weight. If you are on the higher side, try to lose weight and bring it to an optimal level, which would differ from age and other parameters. So that is my message here. So monitor, change your lifestyle, be active, and then prevent diabetes should be a goal, not treating or managing it. Thank you.
Great. So I think the other term, the new term that got added is pre-diabetic. So I think that is something to watch out for and something to sort of manage, be aware and control. Coming back to you, ma'am, your couple of points that I may not have asked or we may not have covered. Anything that you want to kind of talk about?
So in my opinion, the nutrition education with respect to diabetes should start right at the childhood level. Like for the parents, it should be. So when the parents are well educated, the mother is interested in feeding her children. The father is interested in bringing foods, or so if they have their own faulty habits, it is definitely going to be passed down to the children, because that's what the children are also picking up. At the same time, we got to also make sure that when we are correcting the parents, when they are coming at their middle age with their diabetes to us, what happens is we get to see that the mother and the father, if both of them have diabetes or even one person has diabetes, they'll be like, okay, I'll have to cook separately for myself. And that's the major concern, because the mothers are like, oh my God, if I have developed diabetes, is this what I have to cook only for myself? And my personal inputs would be always like, it should not be just for you, because first and foremost, it's a very practical kind of diet that you have to follow. It should be a sustainable approach. Excuse me. It should not be something that you are doing temporarily, like you're going on on strict diets or fat diets, and then you're trying to wonder how long can I pull through it? Do I have to make separate preparations for it? So it should be so sustainable. The sustainability of the diet determines the health of the family. So if one of the person in the family has developed diabetes, first and foremost, it should be a preventive approach. Like I said earlier, that if we have family history, we are the ones who will pull the trigger, because it's just there in the genes. But our food habits, our lifestyle will determine whether we have it or not, or at least we can delay the onset. So if we know that there is some, and we know the rate at which the prevalence of diabetes in India is 1 in 5. So surely every household has one diabetes patient. So with that insight, why don't we groom the household diet? The nutrition at the grassroots level, at the foundation level, needs to be corrected, and it should not be secluded. The patient should not feel that he's suffering. It should be something that is enjoyable. The food items should be enjoyable in such a way that it is delicious, at the same time it is healthy. So it should not look like a punishment to the person himself, or if the person wants to cook it for the family, the family should be like, oh my God, because this person has developed diabetes, now all of us have to eat like that. So if yes, there is this kind of a mindset that we are building up, that yes, it is a preventive approach or a curative approach, this diet can still be pleasing enough that it suits the taste buds of the children. Of course, it is difficult to fine tune the taste buds of the children, because they are going to throw tantrums for junk food. The exposure is so much on the screen and the internet that even if we don't watch, nowadays the trend of television is gone. The children are hooked on to their devices. So the advertisements will still pop up, and they will influence the choices and the way the food is being marketed. Children do fall prey to it, right? So we as parents should not classify, saying that, okay, this set of food is just cooked for me because I am suffering from diabetes, and you can very well enjoy your chunk of chips and junk food at this age because you're a teenager or you're a child. And later on, so we are laying the foundations of faulty eating habits, and then the child has to do the same thing that we are doing at middle age. We are unlearning the art of eating junk food, and then picking up learning, wherein the mindset has become so strong that we have hooked on to certain taste buds. Somebody likes so spicy, अरे मैं तो बचपन से भुजिया खाता था, अभी अचानक से भुजिया खाना बंद हो गया है because I've developed this condition. So it should be the training that has to be done at a family level. It should be a fun activity. Maybe on weekends the family should get together, whip up a meal, or at least discuss while they are eating. There should be no screen time. Everybody's lost in their own screen times. When the mother, the father, they're like, okay, we all need a me time. The children are not aware of what they're eating because they're watching the screen and they're eating meals. So foundations have to be laid strong at the family level, so that we don't have to get our children to unlearn the concepts of unhealthy eating when they are in the middle age or they have grown as adults. And diabetes nowadays is not waiting for the middle age to creep in. Like Dr. Baxi said, it is coming into as young as 25, 20, 25, 30, right? And in COVID, we have also seen diabetes prevalence in children so much at as young as 8 to 10. So it's not really age determined now. It's more about lifestyle. So we should not wait for the diagnosis to happen. We should rather work from a preventive and the foundation level, the grassroots. If it is strong, of course, the habits are laid down, and that's what as parents we can gift our children a future, that eating healthy, it should be inherent. It should be running in the blood, rather than you unlearning the unhealthy items. You let going off because you have developed a disease, and then you still craving for it. So, so that it is just a simple thing wherein we have to get them to understand that yes, you can enjoy your bag of chips, but there is some limitation to it, and you have to eat a set of healthy stuff also, which can be made healthy at home and tasty, so that it doesn't feel like a punishment at the family level. So it should not be that a diabetes patient should feel like it's a punishment for him or for the entire family if it's becoming a meal like that. So yeah.
Got it. So I think inclusiveness is definitely something that I would personally also pitch for. As in my experience, I think it also improves sort of compliance. So let's say if there is an elder in the family who has diabetes, and you cook food that is suitable for them, and then you eat the same thing. It of course is more makes them feel less miserable. There is compliance. Better saying, okay, we allow eating the same thing. It is better for us. And like you mentioned, there's no point in first damaging the system and then trying to do course correction. It is, if it is not good for somebody else, I'm sure it's not good for you as well. So I think getting that baseline. With that, on to the last question for Prashant. Of course, we have audience questions, but from my side, I know you blamed me for throwing a googly at you right at the beginning. So this time I will not do a googly. I'll let you speak on what you think as an industry, what we are doing enough, not doing enough, what we should do, what people should think about more.
See, again, this is that was a bouncer. This is as good as a bouncer or as a googly, because much of what I say may make me unpopular. But having said that, see, it's like what comes first, the hen or the egg? So it's a question which anyone can try to answer. And see, the industry designs products. When R&D in an industry sets out to design a product, they check out what does the consumer want. So there's what does the consumer need, what does the consumer want, and then what is the consumer prepared to pay. And accordingly, the products get developed. And these are picked up by the consumers, and the result is in front of you. So the consumers use it, they enjoy it, they give a multi-star rating to the industry, they love the products, they love the industry, they love the advertisements. But everyone loves everything. And the results are in front of you. As long as the results are good, everyone's happy. The minute result is bad, then comes a question of whom to blame, whose head has to roll for this. So let's look at it a bit more differently. See what I see is, I've noted a few trends. When we look at people, see, I've seen youngsters, I've seen people like you've eaten well. Within 1.5 hours, you're rummaging the shelf for something else. You're again hungry. Now the question is, do you really need the food? Actually, you don't. You've eaten, your body is still digesting. It's not yet done with what you've eaten. It's still to get assimilated. It's still to get utilized. And you're looking for your next dose. So there's your mind, which is actually pushing you that why you're not feeding me. And this is where most of the consumers are like start making a mistake. Now what happens is, you're eating far more frequently than what you should. B, you're eating items of your preference as compared to what you actually need. When you eat more carbohydrates, more fats, more frequently, much more frequently than what you are utilizing, what happens? It all gets assimilated in your body. Your pre-diabetes gets triggered. Fatty liver disease gets triggered. Now, what one has to do is, see, the question is not about what the industry designs. The question is about how to educate the user, the consumer, how to educate people on what hunger actually is, what the hunger of the body is, and what the hunger of the mind is, and how they should deal with it. It's a far deeper and far bigger subject than what people realize. It takes a whole lot of time and effort to actually be able to discern what is the nutrition that you need, provide it for yourself, and use it up. See, what goes in has to get utilized by your body. If you do not use it, if you keep on accumulating, it becomes toxic for you. So that bit of education is very, very important. And the question is, whether it's the industry or the medical community per se, or the nutrition community or the scientific community per se, where are we with regards having an impact on consumers for the way they should be consuming food? I think we're just at the very, very, very tip of the iceberg. Neither is the consumer, the way I see it, neither is the consumer ready to imbibe that kind of knowledge. The industry is always driven by what consumer wants and to design products according to his want. Now, going and teaching the consumer what he should want is very much in the future. I don't think we are there. So to conclude, my message to the industry, as well as to the consumer, would be design foods as close as possible to balanced nutrition, make it more nutritious as far as possible, and to the consumer, reach out to scientific people, reach out to people who have expertise on food and nutrition, understand what you need, and build your consumption patterns according to your need. It always pays to invest into your health the way you do in your wealth, rather than fall ill and then try to repair what has gone wrong. This is the kind of message that I would like to leave to both the industry as well as the consumer.
Great. So I think education is what you highlighted on, and I think that is what we are trying to do today. All of us sitting here together, hopefully it has answered some questions. I'm not saying 90 minutes is a good enough time to talk on such a big topic, but hopefully it has provided insights into the various aspects. So a lot of questions coming in from people who've tuned in, and unless there is a name to it, I will not name and we can pick up. So the first one says, if there is no belly fat, then does it indicate that they don't have high triglyceride levels or silent diabetes?
I'll take this answer. So belly fat is something which is visible, it may or may not be related to your blood test, can be something totally different. You might be very thin. High triglycerides can be present in other conditions as well, with diabetes, without diabetes, someone with pancreatic issues, someone with bad diet who's had diabetes and who's been losing weight. So he might have lost 10-20 kg weight. He might be, a BMI of 17 or 18, feeling very weak, and triglycerides might be 1000. So it does not have a direct relation. Of course, the common phenotype we see, in our type 2 diabetes patients is the general obese or overweight patient, who's been inactive, whose diet is not good, whose sugars are high, whose cholesterol levels are high. That's the common one. But that doesn't mean that if you are not obese or don't have belly fat, or if you're not overweight, you cannot have high triglyceride levels.
Okay, thank you for that. I think there is a general comment and a different question, and I think we are close to 12:30, but I'm hoping we can extend by 5 minutes just to answer these questions. So the next question is, how is liver health related to management of diabetes?
Okay, I'll try to answer this also, then we'll take other experts' opinions. So that's a very important question. Nowadays, more and more importance is being given to the liver as a very important metabolic organ, because all the fat does go there. We earlier we used to hear about terms like fatty liver. The importance of that per se, some medical terms called as NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is very early. You get a sonography done in most of our diabetes patients who are overweight or obese. The ultrasound report would say fatty liver grade 1 or grade 2. Initially it didn't used to mean anything. I mean, we didn't used to give enough importance to it that ye fatty liver to sab mein rehta hai, but now that is affecting your health, and we are finding more and more information about that how it is affecting the whole metabolism of the patient in terms of obesity, in terms of diabetes, in terms of how the body manages the sugars and the cholesterol levels. So it's very important. Liver health per se is very important. Now metabolically associated liver disease, so something called as metabolically associated liver disease. So a lot of studies are being done recently. Yesterday I was in a conference. Ujjwala also was there. 2 days there was an important diabetes conference. I heard Dr. Shashank Joshi, one of the renowned endocrinologists. He also was speaking on liver itself. He had a talk particularly on liver and diabetes. So that's the importance we are looking at it coming to the future. So liver is a very important organ, and it's all related to the weight. So ultimately, if you want to target diabetes or you want to stay healthy, diabetes or no diabetes, you have to maintain your weight. Your weight is good, your reports will be good, your liver will be fine, and ultimately you will do fine.
Great. The next question, I think, is more a dietetics question, saying, my simple question is that in general, how much sugar is adequate to a person of 50-60 kg category? Like 2 spoons, daily maximum, any guideline?
So although there are stipulated guidelines like 5 teaspoons per day, but it is very vague to answer this question, because we have to still consider the total amount of carbohydrates in the diet. We have to look into the percentage of carbohydrate. Like when we want to increase the proteins, increase the fats, we have to control the carbohydrates. So when we control the carbohydrates, not just the sugar that is coming, in the form of teas, coffees, and that's where the problem lies. People want to cut down on the sugar. They don't want to take visible sugar. Like they don't want to take white sugar because they know it is harmful. So they would want to drink teas. So that's another invisible form of sugar. At the same time, we have to also look into the total amount of carbohydrates coming from the protein foods, because if it's a vegetarian, the person is vegetarian, even the dal will have carbohydrate, like Mr. Prashant was also mentioning. Anything a vegetarian will eat will have carbohydrates. To top it, if they are consuming sugar, it is going to add on to the total carbohydrate count, right? Because the carbohydrate itself is going to be broken down in the blood stream as sugar. So then it is unfair on my part to state that, okay, per day you can take 2 teaspoons of sugar allowance, or 5 teaspoons or 10 teaspoons. It is totally dependent on how much amount of sugar, carbohydrate is already there in the diet, how much needs to be come down to. And then maybe if there is an allowance to it, if the person is a sugar addict, has sweet tooth issues, then we will have to understand how much allowance we should give if there is a scope. If the person is already having hyperglycemia, it is already calling for a resistant starch, high on dietary fiber kind of a diet. So the chances of complex carbohydrates increase, and the chances of simple carbohydrates like sugar, the question that is being asked, is very minimal. So we have to look into the condition of the patient, the current scenario, what are the blood sugars around, and what is the diet composition per se to give that kind of allowance. So it's not fair for me to state anything here.
Also, what I think is, in this, carbohydrates are something which do not come with an RDA. The reason why they do not come with a direct RDA is because, they have to be consumed to usage. It's like your age, the amount of work that you are doing, the physical activity that you're going through. Means that there are a lot of decisions that you will have to consider while deciding how much of sugar to take or not take. As a thumb rule, like I would turn around and say, as you're aging, try and avoid direct use of sugar as far as possible. Try and train yourself to be without sugar, and you'll be fit. And I can demonstrate it to you. I can stand in front of you and demonstrate to you how this thing works. But when it comes to a child, if you are suggesting a food for a child has to be more active, has to play more physically. So I would suggest there should be sugar that is put into the diet of a child. So what happens is, means if I were you, this question has to be seen as to the age group of the person, the physical working of the person, and accordingly designed.
Great. The next question is simple. I'm not sure if the answer is going to be that simple. Is that does excess glucose get stored in the liver?
Yeah, as far as the biochemistry goes, any excess sugar that you consume gets converted into glycogen, and it gets converted into fat and gets stored in your body as cellulite fat, belly fat, or whatever you want to call it. So your body uses what it has to use on an immediate basis, but also is programmed to the excess that you are feeding it. It is programmed to convert it into glycogen or fat and store it in different parts of your body.
Dr. Rahul, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I agree with that part. So of course, excess glucose would be converted, and it can lead to high triglyceride levels as well, So excess glucose per se, and of course, ultimately with all the weight and all, it does go into the liver. So as I said, changing your diet, avoiding refined carbs, avoiding sugar as such. But as Ujjwala also mentioned, when someone asks about sugar, and that's a very common feeling amongst us Indians. I ask them, कि आप diet बराबर कर रहे हैं, diabetes diet follow कर रहे हैं, to my patients. They say, yes sir, चाय में शक्कर नहीं लेता हूँ, मैं शक्कर बिल्कुल नहीं लेता हूँ. But then he has 4 biscuits in the morning, evening with tea, he will have a toast, he'll have a big bowl of rice along with 2 or 3 chapatis. So we have to understand diabetic diet doesn't mean just cutting off. I don't have sweets, they will say, मिठाई नहीं खाता हूँ, बंद कर दिया. Diabetic diet is not only about cutting off sugar, that's just one part of it. All these carbs, especially refined carbs which we are eating, gets converted into sugar in your body anyway, So it's about cutting down refined carbs, increasing the proteins appropriately, taking good fats, and taking salads, taking fibers, taking appropriate fruits in the right amount at the right time, having a period of fasting, which may be appropriate for you. Nowadays we learn or read a lot about intermittent fasting. It does work very well. Some people do 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, and so on. So, even a period of 12 to 14 hours of fasting, you eat your dinner by 7, 8 p.m., whatever your time may be. After that, don't eat anything at night, 10, 11, 12. People will have a glass of milk at bedtime, 11:30, and then go to sleep. Then 6:37, get up and have their tea with biscuits. So, there's just a 6 hours gap when you've not had anything. Let the body utilize what you've eaten. Then it helps you a lot with your weight and your glucose levels. So this intermittent fasting, also something which we've not touched enough during this session. So that again is very, very important. It's nothing big, you eat your dinner on time, don't eat anything after that, sleep well, get up, go for your walk, and then have it. 12 to 14 hours is easily done that way. And that's what intermittent fasting is. In many religions, anyway, they don't eat at night. Since decades and years, and since many years. So like for example, Jainism, they eat before sunset, and then morning they will start their day, go to temple and eat at 8 or 9 o'clock. So 14-15 hours done anyway. So that's intermittent fasting, and that nowadays only it's taken up a lot of coming to media, and a lot of benefits are coming up. So this has been done in India, and a lot of religious practices also, which indirectly has benefited a lot of our people. So practicing such simple ways can go a long way.
Great. My penultimate question. So everybody talks about millets, and this question is from Sarika. Would replacing staples like rice and wheat with millet help us? One, for balanced diet, and second, for sustainability. I'm thinking it's a comment, but any opinions on using millet to replace our rice?
See, if you take millets, they're also pretty rich in carbs. See, there is this popular belief that ragi is a great ingredient for diabetics. And ragi has a whole lot of sugars. So in the past, I've tried designing diabetic foods with ragi, and haven't been able to do great products out of ragi, because overall the glycemic index, it tends to push the glycemic index up. But somehow there is a popular belief amongst people that it is better. So the answer to this question is no, I don't think by themselves millets are good. But again, if someone wants to depend on a millet-based meal and have millet-based food, I would rather suggest to them, instead of using refined millets, you please use more coarser millets with more bran and more fiber in it, so as to bring down the glycemic index as far as possible.
Got it. Ujjwala, you wanted to add anything?
So yes, people are doing that. They are replacing the rice with millets, but the whole point is that the quantity of the millet, if it still remains the same as rice, and if it is so very simply put, you have bajra granules, so people are replacing the rice with the bajra granules, and so you get two types of it in the market. One is with the husk, one is without the husk. Of course, the one with the husk will need a lot longer processing to be cooked. Likewise, people are also replacing the rice with dalia, wheat flake, wheat flakes. So the coarser the grain, the better. So you have mota dalia, barik dalia. So people are doing that. What really matters is the portion size still. Okay. If the portion of the rice, the total portion remains the same and it has been only replaced with millet, the carbohydrate count still remains the same, and it is going to cause some kind of a spike into the blood sugars, because like ragi also has a high glycemic index. Bajra, jawar, of course, they have good amount of fibers, but they are still going to spike up the blood sugars. So there is a format of preparing so instead of just making a heap full of millet, right, porridge, or just a dalia, plain dalia, why not add vegetables to it? Put a spoonful of fat, ghee, or avocado or olive oil into it to reduce the glycemic index. So that these small efforts can be done while at the preparation level, so that the glycemic index can be pulled down. But eventually, if the portion doesn't get controlled and the accompaniment still remain the same, it is not going to help wonderfully. If we were to replace the rice with the millet rotis, it really makes quite a good difference, because it's coarse, it's dry, and the amount of millet roti one can eat is going to help to reduce the quantity naturally, because somebody who is used to eating a heap full of dalia to replace the rice, if that person is asked to eat the millet roti as per the content, satiety level, they are generally able to reduce the carbohydrate count, or maybe the portion, at least by half a roti. So if somebody is eating 2 heapfuls of rice, cups of rice, cooked rice, replacing it with 2 cups of millets, they would rather be able to reduce it by at least 1.5. So consume 1.5 and consume less of half. So -5, minus half cup of millet is gone if the roti is coming into the picture, because somebody has to chew upon it. It's dry in texture, so it takes time to chew the food, and chewing by itself is a good process to reduce the portion size. So if people want to switch from the rice to the millet, yes, change the form, make it in the form of roti, they will not be able to eat much, and the glycemic index gets controlled naturally.
Okay, so I think the message is quantity is the key. You can keep
Quantity
changing.
and the form in which it is prepared.
Right. So I think we'll take a last question. I know there are more questions, but that will continue forever. But the last question, and I'm sure there is no direct answer to this, but somebody asked saying, by having roti in the morning, sugar of my dad goes high level. What change my dad should do for this?
By having roti.
Roti, yeah.
By having rotis in the morning, the sugar levels goes high.
Yeah.
So if the person is used to making rotis, and so first way we'll of course would want to discuss what kind of other forms of breakfast they can make. But if assuming that this person can only make rotis for the breakfast, so why not change the flour? Okay, so instead of, if it is wheat flour, look into the complexity of the wheat flour. Is it the store-bought wheat flours, wherein it is definitely compromised on the wheat and the fiber, and it may have some proportions of maida also. So it's best to provide the wheat grains by themselves, get them mixed with some oats, some soy flour, um, in order to reduce the glycemic index, considering that this person is going to prefer eating rotis only for the breakfast. And at the same time, why not add certain functional ingredients, functional food ingredients into this, like flax seeds, into the flour itself. So that also helps to reduce the glycemic index. So we need to understand what the person is wanting to eat favorably, and then modify the ingredients of that, and it really helps. So if done in this fashion, I'm sure the glycemic index can go down considerably.
Sure. Thank you so much. We are already 15 minutes past. I asked for 10 minutes, but we are exceeding 15 minutes. So sorry about the questions we were not able to answer. I think we'll probably find another occasion to answer them, but we are already 15 minutes past. I don't want to keep everybody waiting. So they're already spending a lot of time on this. So thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be able to talk to you. So much knowledge that is shared. I think we cannot reiterate about the education part. I think Dr. Rahul, you're doing a good job. Ujjwala, ma'am, you're doing a great job as well. And by telling the industry what we should do, I think Prashant is doing his part. Hopefully, I'm the channel that did a little bit of it, and not a lot of people keep blaming me, saying you sit in the industry and you keep kind of talking bad about it. But I think it's not good or bad. I guess it's a matter of being aware. All of us need to be aware, whether we are in the industry, we are also consumers, various aspects of it. Hopefully, it was insightful for all the people who joined in, and we did hear about some of the potential solutions. I want to take this time to thank all our panelists, Dr. Rahul Baxi, Ms. Ujjwala Baxi, Mr. Prashant B, for taking time out from your schedules to be with us. And as we start wrapping up, a little bit about ourselves, which I started with as well, saying we are a compliance, regulatory, and food consulting company on a mission to keep food safe and nutritious for human consumption. We help our clients with design, implementation of standards and regulatory and compliance for both Indian as well as global standards. Food Safety Conversation is our monthly webinar series, completely free of cost, designed to share learnings from practitioners. We bring in practitioners who've lived through this on various aspects of food safety and nutrition. If you have any feedback, do share it with us on feedback@foodsafetyworks.in. If there are topics that you would like us to cover, please send them to us, and we'll try to see if we can bring the expert panel together on this. And to stay updated on our webinars, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and our handle everywhere is Food Safety Works. We regularly share news and insights about what's going on in the world of food safety. As a company, we are committed to sharing knowledge and providing end-to-end solutions. We conduct regular online trainings on various topics, including post-tac training for those of you in the industry. That's an FSSAI mandate training. This week, we are also doing classes on traceability and recall. Do register for the same. You can download our app from Play Store. You can join webinars from there as well. There's a lot of pre-available content already there, so you can browse through on your free time on your app. A lot of learning opportunities there, and the app will also keep you updated on the knowledge sharing sessions that we do. So to check out how we can help, you can look at our website, www.foodsafetyworks.com. And while we are there, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. And I want to wrap up with thanking everyone on the panel for having joined us, taking the time. And everyone, all the audience, please do share the links with your friends if you thought it was useful. Thank you again for joining and wishing you safe times ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.